to me, Professor Coffey, that one of the problems here is there's a certain amount of money, and we're sort of backing our coverage into that amount of money, as opposed to creating.
It's again, underfunded. You're quite right.
Right. The law is the law, and if it happens to be underfunded, then there ought to be an assessment or some way of making the people whole. Not say, well, it's not $500,000 because we don't have enough cash in the bank to make this thing whole. And again, I just go back to how important it is, how strategic and essential it is for the public to know that if they invest, that the money, there is a fund there to protect them if there's fraud, insolvency, and those things out there.
I think you're quite right. I want to make
you, which is, if now you're charging 0.25% of the revenue, the net revenue that's generated by a broker, to refill the fund, what would prevent you from coming up with a 1/8 of 1% of revenue to create a fund to pay the Madoff victims some kind of compensation? There's nothing that precludes you from doing that, is it? Is there?
It would have to be
the government, the federal government, failed miserably, and the SEC in particular. So my question to you is this. Since we were responsible for this travesty, shouldn't we take some responsibility now in trying to make the people that were impacted by our incompetence and by our malfeasance by creating a fund to make them somewhat whole? And what would prevent the SEC from doing that?
Well, Congresswoman, thank you. I can respond in two ways. The fund that you talk about is certainly something that Congress could do. If it determined that that was the appropriate thing to do here, certainly you could do that.
Time has expired, Mr. Chairman, but I certainly think that we need to appreciate that going forward doesn't fix those who've been injured by government's inaction, and that we should really reflect on what we can do to make whole some of these people.
Well, I just want to get these two. Just a couple of questions. I think you're absolutely correct, Ms. Spear, and we're going to work toward that end, I hope, as a committee. But I notice you're talking about increasing the premiums in the future. Why haven't you thought about making a back assessment? You're really punishing the people that are going to come into the business or may not even have been in the business when Madoff was around. Why shouldn't we put the assessment on the people that were in the business when it happened? And with the law professor, Coffey, indicating that would put an incentive on the dealers to be working more in conjunction with the SEC and with your organization to see that this doesn't happen, because there would be a payment that they would have to make. In order to accomplish an assessment instead of a future increase in premiums, would you need legislation to do that?
Yes, we would, Mr. Chairman.
Well, will you prepare that request so you get it to the committee and we